Roman is the biggest bad guy character in professional wrestling.
When's the last time you got laid?
French toast is the exchange student that you have like a 3-week affair with.
Like, we can see that you don't have pants on.
Can we tell the truth about Dusty sooner or later?
Bro,
like-
less people wanted that than are currently watching our stream.
And you know Vince, and you still think, are these true? It's like...
Welcome to the Mark It Down podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mark It Down podcast. I'm James Giasanti. It's Friday night, and we are here really late. Thank you for being here to cover TNA Final Resolution. We're closing out the year with a bang, and oh boy, do they really know how to make it hard for me to support them. God, I am all for second chances. I am all for third chances. On rare occasions, even fourth chances. Hell, I'm a Jeff Hardy fan. This is crazy. This kind of sucks. We'll start off with the biggest headline of the night, you know? Tessa Blanchard, former women's champion, former knockouts champion, and former world champion. Yes, former world heavyweight champion for TNA is back with the company. Now, if you guys haven't heard of Tessa Blanchard, or it's been a long time since you've heard Tessa Blanchard's name in a mainstream way, it's entirely her fault. Tessa Blanchard is a young woman. She's got a lot of career ahead of her, depending on how things go. And the daughter of Tully Blanchard, and earmarked to be a leading woman in wrestling for the last several years. She showed up at the original All In. She competed there in a fatal 4-way. She wrestled for TNA during the Impact years, where she did become a Knockouts champion. And like I said, she became the first woman to win the World Championship for TNA. And if I'm going to be honest, I think she's the first woman to win a major North American World Heavyweight Championship, televised World Championship. Huge expectations, huge support for Tessa Blanchard when she was in the middle of all of it. And she was rising. She had a lot of support, both from management and from fans that were really into her. And then the day before she won the World Championship in TNA, some stories started to come out about Tessa's, let's just say not politically correct verbiage, and for being a bully. Multiple women in the sport came out against Tessa, calling her a bully, calling her problematic, calling her just trouble. And she did not handle the response super well. But despite all that, TNA still pushed forward and still made her their world champion that next day. Quite frankly, I don't blame them. They were in a position that they needed to take care of the fans that were watching and that had been following. A lot of it was obviously accusation at that point, and they had booked and built up to her winning the championship to a point that it would have been a disappointment if she didn't win. And I get that. Despite their faith in her, she still managed to let them down. When TNA went into lockdown and the COVID-19 hysteria was in full bloom, she was their world champion. And TNA was still running shows. And TNA, all they asked of her was to film some vignettes, film some promo packages, some anything, and they could figure out how they were going to move forward. They understood that she was down in Mexico and she didn't feel comfortable coming back up. But instead of relinquishing the title via video package or whatever they could have tried to work out, Tessa just basically refused to do anything, held the world championship, I don't want to say hostage, but in contempt. And eventually the title needed to be stripped off of her, and it was just a very, very poorly burnt bridge. Now, moving past that, Tessa, again, did not handle the allegations against her or the accusations against her very well. Accusations and allegations of racism, bullying, just overall not being a pleasant person. She didn't handle any of them very well. And she continued to then work, I guess, the Indies and a little bit of Mexico. Eventually, when the time came that people were trying to reboot her, rehabilitate her image, they planned on rebooting Women of Wrestling, WOW. This was a brand that was supposed to be centered around her. She was the centerpiece of this. She was the name. Everything that was being done with trying to get her back in the good graces of the world and to show her that she could still do it. And before that show could launch, she turned out to be a problem and was not part of the relaunch of Women of Wrestling. So when the report came out today that Tessa Blanchard was quietly re-signed to TNA, there was a lot of groans, there was a lot of frustration, and there was a lot of disappointment. And apparently that extends to people backstage at TNA. As the reporting of the subject, I think it was broken by SRS, or I think it was SRS. A lot of the talent, a lot of the people backstage apparently didn't know until it was reported. People that are supposed to know, people that are in the know, weren't in the know. So, very interesting time now for TNA, as we are seeing over and over again, man, all that good faith that was built up under Scott D'Amore in the later Impact years. Now, am I blaming Anthem? I don't know. There's a rumor, there's a report that this was going on even before the Anthem president started running the company. We don't really know. But, man, I cannot remember the last time I've seen so much goodwill from a rehabbed image, from a rehabbed company, just go completely to waste. It's super disappointing. Again, let me reiterate. I believe in second chances. I believe in people bettering themselves and having that opportunity to better themselves. But we're already on at least strike 2 with her. We've already had the second chance not go well. Who knows? Let's see. Maybe she has grown. She was a young person when everything came out, and she was a young person, even younger, when the things that she had been accused of doing would have happened. People can grow, people can mature, people can get better. But, man, I don't have high hopes. I'll get into what she did. I'll get into how she came back, how she returned, what that was framed around in a little bit. But, yeah, if you're disappointed, you're not wrong. If you're cautiously optimistic, God bless you. Rooting for you to be right. But crazy times for TNA right now. But now that we got through the headline, let's get to the top of the show. As we started off Final Resolution with an X Division Championship match, as Moose, the reigning defending X Division champion, took on the time splitter himself, Kushida. Now, I love this matchup, and I liked it a lot better than Moose's last pay-per-view defense of the title. This was a David and Goliath matchup. It's something that we're going to see a lot of while Moose is X Division champion. And this one played a lot better. And there is a lot of interesting dynamics here. Because I don't think it can be denied how fucking over Moose is. Moose is popular, guys. I always knew he had support. I don't think it really hit me as hard in the face as it did till tonight with how many people were cheering for Moose against Kushida. Now, that's not to say people were booing Kushida. They weren't. People love Kushida. But people were really into Moose tonight. And I get it. I get the hype. I think he's an excellent talent. There's a reason he signed TNA's biggest contract in company history for both longest and I think most money. I get it. He's their guy. He is Mr. TNA. And I think this X Division run is great so far. Again, wasn't super crazy about the last big defense that he had, but this match against Kushida really played things out a little bit differently. I don't foresee, at least not immediately, not in the immediate future, I don't foresee a babyface turn for Moose, but he didn't act too diabolically tonight. At one point, after having wrestled Kushida on the outside and making it safely back into the ring, the ref was about to count to 10 to count Kushida out, but Moose didn't let it happen. He stopped the referee from counting the 10, gave Kushida the time to get into the ring. Now, maybe you want to argue that Moose just wanted to continue the beatdown, or maybe he wanted to honorably defeat his opponent. I'm not entirely sure. But it was a very interesting dynamic, a very interesting wrinkle in this character's progression. Kushida bringing out a ferocity that we haven't seen in some time. It's almost a disappointment that the Jonathan Gresham inked story didn't go further with Kushida, because that would have been a good reason. But this was a very focused, a very violent Kushida, and I liked it. I liked it. It's a nice twist on this character. Moose looked like an absolute monster here. At one point, leading to that almost 10 count that I called out before, he caught Kushida from who had attempted a high-flying maneuver. He caught him on the outside in a powerbomb position and then big swung him into the steel steps and then powerbombed Kushida onto the apron. He looks like a juggernaut. If you're a comic book reader, this feels like Juggernaut taking on Spider-Man. It was pretty awesome. Eventually, Moose getting Kushida back in. He runs around the ring, picks up steam, but Kushida is able to dodge it, and Moose collides into the steps. Kushida then went on the attack, like I said, just brutally attacking Moose's left arm. For the back end of this match, Moose was wrestling one-armed, further showing how strong a specimen this guy is. At one point, he hits his finisher off the top rope, only using that one arm that he had. It was so cool. It was so cool. Moose looks like a beast. Kushida did everything he can, even going for the hoverboard lock. As Moose dove off the top rope, Kushida catching him. It was really cool. It was a really good spot. Moose eventually getting his way to the bottom rope. He then goes for a handspring back elbow, that being Kushida, but Moose drop kicked him in the back, setting up for a big spear. Thankfully, he used the good arm, and that was the end of that. Strong opening matchup, strong defense for Moose. This run out of Moose is exactly what I wanted for another star who's in the next matchup. This big man dominating in the X Division. And I think he looks great. I'm very interested to see where this is going, because the system are, I don't want to say in disarray, but they're definitely varying in success levels. So, very cool to see. commentary noted, I think that this was the 19th championship match that some member of the system was a part of this year. That's crazy. Like, that's crazy, but that's cool. I mean, if you're going to be a dominant faction, that's what you got to be. That's how you got to portray it. That's how you're going to be in the big stuff. So, good on Moose. Good on the X Division. And really cool to see Kushida also bring out the strong style. Moving backstage, we had an interview with Mean Gia Miller talking to First Class, Casey Navarro, and AJ Francis. AJ Francis, who is challenging for the World Championship later in the night against Nick Nemeth. This was a fun little promo. We have a comment here. What do we got here? Daniel Hernandez. LOL TNA. Is LOL another wrestling company? I haven't heard of them. Where are they based out of? Are they on TV? Let me know. Also, hello, Daniel Hernandez. I really, really like Casey Navarro. I've been saying it for a while. I think he is a future star if he plays his cards right. And as somebody who's watched him on the indies in House of Glory and Revolver and a few places, I was stoked when he got the call to TNA. Initially just wrestling, I think it was sort of freelance, and then stepping up to replace Rich Swann in the group while Rich is dealing with his personal issues. And I think Navarro has been killing it. I think he has been playing such a good foil for AJ Francis, and I think he's, I don't want to say doing a better job than Swann, but he's definitely playing the hype man very, very well. Really doing a great job of selling AJ Francis's rise to the TNA World title picture. And, of course, referencing how he's the man who made everybody believe in Joe Hendry. So, good spot from Casey Navarro. And AJ Francis also talked about how this is all he's ever wanted. He wants to be a world champion and a wrestling promotion. And look, we'll talk about it more when we cover the main event. But the reality is, AJ Francis has grown and gotten better by leaps and bounds, in my opinion, in his time in TNA. If you compare who he is as a performer in TNA to what we saw of him in WWE, it feels like night and day. I was saying before, I believe in second chances for people. Granted, I was talking about a very different subject matter when I said that before with Tessa, but it applies to people who are trying to prove themselves in whatever category. A lot of people wrote AJ Francis off. A lot of people wrote Top Dollar off. And in my opinion, does it sort of maybe speak to TNA's world title division that he's challenging at a pay-per-view? Maybe. But he did put himself in that position. He's delivered in every front that he's been on. He's delivered every opportunity that's been given to him. So, good for him. Good for him. You go, AJ Francis. Moving on, we go to what was supposed to be a triple threat tag team match. But due to some unfortunate circumstances, Jake Something's partner, Hammerstone, couldn't be here tonight and couldn't tag with Jake. Instead of opting to find another partner, Jake opted to wrestle the match alone. So Jake Something took on PCO and Sami Callihan and the Rascals. Now, if you're wondering why this match was happening, great question. I think the implication is whoever won this match was going to make a good argument to go after the TNA World Tag Team titles at a future point, that they were positioning themselves in a much higher place on the card or in the division. That's fine. Sometimes it is fun to just have matches for the sake of matches. Pay-per-views aren't always the place to do that, but this was an entertaining matchup, and I'm not going to complain too much about it. everybody did great here. I love the Rascals. I've really, really, really grown on them over time, or they've grown on me over time. They are a young, fun tag team, and I think they probably, for me, got a little overshadowed by the ABC because of just how big a fan of the ABC that I am. But I really have come to fall for the Rascals. Their vibe is fun. The kids from the treehouse is a fun little gimmick, and despite not being crazy about how things panned out, the interaction with former MSK tag team partner Wesley from NXT did wonders to build sympathy and support for Zachary Wentz, Trey Miguel, and the Rascals as a unit. So good stuff from those guys. PCO and Sami Callihan is a tag team that I am disappointed in myself for never really thinking of prior. They've got a lot in common, and it works. So I was pleasantly surprised to see them working together. Again, you guys know, unfortunately, I haven't been covering TNA every week. I haven't been able to watch every Impact. Things are getting back to normal. So God willing, I'll be able to continue with that and continue covering Impact over the next few weeks. But this was my first exposure to them as a tag team, and I enjoyed them. They gel well enough. Jake, who I was talking about before when I was talking about the X Division Championship, being a powerhouse in that division and wanting kind of what Moose is doing now for Jake. He looked like, again, this is the word I use for him almost every time I cover him. He's a stud. He looked so strong taking on these other two teams. He never shied away from the action. He never shied away from getting involved in the matchup. To the point that it did cost him in the end, because he is the person who unfortunately got the pin, or took the pin. What up, Dev? How you doing tonight, this Friday night? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. It is, as always, much appreciated. And if you didn't watch TNA, if you didn't get to watch Final Resolution, I totally understand. It's still a pleasure to have you here anyway, pal. Sorry, just dealing with some socials. You got to remember, when it's just me doing it all by myself, it's tiring. It's exhausting. And quite frankly, I got an upset tummy. Hibachi ruined my stomach before. But I digress. No reason to shame you all or shame myself in front of you all with my unfortunate tummy troubles. But this was a fun matchup. Jake going toe-to-toe with PCO, delivering a hell of a big power bomb, which PCO just ate, got back up. You know me, I love my meaty men slapping each other's meat. And these guys delivered on that front. The Rascals being afraid to take on PCO, but still bringing the fight to him was a good spot. I really enjoyed the bit where Sami Callihan tried on 3 occasions to do a tope, but kept getting interrupted or kept getting caught or whatever it was, eventually just sending PCO up for the PCO salt off the top rope to everybody on the outside. It was a good spot. It was a fun bit. The finish coming as, again, Jake Something doing all the fighting on his own, getting caught by the Rascals, Wentz landing a flying stomp onto Jake, and Trey Miguel rolling him up for the pin, getting the 1-2-3. After the match, Sami Callihan showing his respect to the Rascals, giving them a big old hug, but that hug is interrupted by this mysterious 23 that keeps showing up on TNA. It's been happening in Impact. Now it's happening on pay-per-view. When the lights came back up and the 23, which you kept hearing, 23 is just a number. When that was over, PCO's now in the ring, confused alongside Sami. Sami questions the Rascals if they were responsible for it. I wonder how long this is going to drag out. Maybe it makes its way to Genesis. to have a big debut potentially at the pay-per-view, the first pay-per-view of the year. Who knows? But Sami Callihan not thrilled with this storyline, or I should say not thrilled with this mystery that he's wrapped himself in. Moving on, we then got to a backstage segment between Eric Young and Steve Maclin. Maclin, who is part of the Fatal 4-Way to determine the number one contender for the TNA World Championship later tonight. He's getting hyped up by Eric Young. Maclin telling him that he will deliver, and not parting, but splitting on good terms there. Eric Young, who would then join commentary later for that matchup. So, nice way. Look, you guys know I'm a Maclin guy. He is somebody I would have been happy to see win this matchup, but I also knew he probably had the least chance of actually winning this matchup. So I'm glad that he got some talking time. We then move over to what was a fun match, but also what's the word I'm looking for here? A frustrating match. What's up, DWW? Down with Wrestling. Thank you for subscribing. We appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying what the words that are coming out of my mouth. I hope you enjoyed Final Resolution tonight. If you didn't, I'm doing my best to make you want to go watch it. But thank you for joining the party. We have fun here. And next week or 2 weeks is Christmas, so we will have cookies. But thank you for being here, DWW. But yes, we then moved over to Trent Seven versus Ace Austin. Ace Austin, who is currently partnerless, unfortunately. Ace Austin, who had a tough week in general prior to this, if you looked at Revolver, getting betrayed by his real-life girlfriend, Gia Miller. Doesn't matter the company, doesn't matter the actions. I will always cheer Gia Miller. In my mind, that means Ace Austin did something wrong and deserved it. But that is Revolver. We are talking TNA tonight. Ace Austin, who's unfortunately dealing with the loss or the injury of his partner, Chris Bay. Guys, it has been around a month, maybe a little bit longer, and we still don't really have any news on Chris Bay other than TNA continuing to send well wishes to him. TNA sharing the GoFundMe that his family has set up. So guys, if you are checking this out, if you have the ability to, don't feel obligated, but if you have the ability, go check out Chris Bay's GoFundMe as he is recovering from what was very clearly a very rough, scary injury. So again, wishing the best to Chris Bay. But moving back to the show itself, Austin is alone now. He doesn't have his ABC partner. He is finding where he's going to land now because he's definitely not, he hasn't landed into a big storyline yet. Yes, he got attacked by Trent Seven a few weeks ago, got low blowed, but this isn't necessarily the story I want to see for Ace. I have been long proclaiming that I think Ace Austin can be and arguably should be one of the faces of TNA. I think he was a torch carrier, a torch bearer during the COVID era of TNA, of Impact. I think he is a great former X Division champion. I think he is a great former tag team champion. And I think he has it in him to become a future world champion. And I understand, coming right out of the injury and coming right out of the reconfiguration, it's hard to land into something big. So you need something to sort of transition you over. Nothing against Trent Seven, but man, woof. The match itself, though, fun. I'd argue that Ace looked like a friggin' superhero here. Kicking out of, not immediately because it happened on the apron, but being able to survive a burning hammer onto the apron. I know moves are only as protected as we imagine they are, but it's a burning hammer on the apron. Damn. Ace and Ace was definitely fired up to start the matchup. Trent powerbombing Ace really quickly and then rubbing the Chris Bay shirt that Ace wore on his crotch. That really set things up. They kept going back at it, leading to that burning hammer that I spoke to. But Ace was, to his credit and to the credit of the spot, he put his foot on the rope. He didn't kick out. So I can take that a lot better. I can stomach that a lot better. Both men hitting huge moves onto one another, kicking out, Ace kicking out of a pile driver, kicking out of a lot of offense that I really thought Trent had him down for. Trent hitting his ripcord lariat, and again following that pile driver, Ace kicking out of everything. The finish of the match coming as Ace hit, and this was a really sweet spot that quite frankly kind of touched me a little bit. Ace hitting the art of finesse and the fold to get the win. The art of the finesse being Chris Bay's finisher, part of their tag team finish together. He hit their tag team finish by himself. I thought that was a beautiful spot. I thought that was a lovely spot. It might take a moment or two. It might take a match or two to really find the perfect flow of it. But Ace looked great doing it. Trent sold it very well. Wow. Johnny in the comments saying TNA needs to sign Marty Skrull, Drew Gulak, and Velveteen Dream. Look, we live in a world where Tessa Blanchard is back on the roster. Anything is certainly possible. But just like I did not want Tessa Blanchard on the roster, I do not want any one of these men on the roster either. They have all done some pretty grimy shit. So, damn. But yeah, great showing from Ace Austin. Again, maybe a little too great, kicking out of some things that are shocking. But hey, I am like I said, I'm a big proponent of this guy being strapped a rocket to him. This was a good way of doing it. They really showed a toughness to Ace that I don't think we've seen before. So whether he's the person to dethrone Moose and take the X Division Championship, or maybe he does eventually work his way up to the world title picture. Rooting for him just the same way I'm rooting for Bay. Love those guys. Too sweet. And don't piss off Gia Miller. I digress. Moving backstage again, we had a recap of a pre-show match where Frankie Kazarian beat Jonathan Gresham via submission. Damn. Gresham, damn. Did he, piss off somebody at TNA? I'm not saying this guy should be a world champion or anything, but as often as he is touted as one of the best in the world, man, does his win-loss record not reflect that. Oofa. Kazarian talking, of course, about being the king of TNA, talking about having his Call Your Shot Gauntlet title opportunity, and that he would be keeping a very close eye on the main event between Nick Nemeth and AJ Francis for the world title later tonight. So, Frankie being Frankie. Moving on, we then got to the Jordynne Grace Rosemary match. For the most part, this was an even match. I'd say Rosemary had some really good offense here. She, on multiple occasions, tried to get an underhanded win. She had no hesitation about getting the count-out win at one point mid-match. At another point, hitting a massive spear onto Jordynne, I think on the outside, and then going for a sleeper hold and trying to put Jordynne to sleep on the outside, trying to get that 10-count victory, that count-out victory. Almost got to question logic just a little bit, because if you could choke her out in the ring. The ref will give you the win there, Rosemary. You don't have to wait for her to get the 10 count. I digress. As the action is getting back into the ring, Rosemary hits another massive spear through from the ramp through the ropes onto Jordan, only getting the 2 count. She tried on multiple occasions to hit the as above, so below. Jordan countering it on every occasion. Eventually, Jordan hitting the muscle buster, going to get that 1, that 2, and not the 3, because somebody wearing a big puffy coat, a hood, and everything to distract from who they are, pulled the referee out and then attacked Jordan Grace, hitting a hammerlock DDT. That person proving to be none other than Tessa Blanchard. It is what it is. I am going to be very, very sad to see Jordan put Tessa over on her way out, because as we all know, and as we all strongly suspect, Jordan is on her way out to WWE once her already shortened contract, will be expiring soon. I thought the match was fun. I, for a second, thought that Rosemary actually might have gotten the win at one point or another, just because I could see Jordan wanting to put over the talent on her way out. But wasn't to be. Protected, I guess, both women with that finish by having Tessa do what she did. Following the match, Tessa sort of scrambled. Following the beatdown, I should say, Tessa sort of scrambled her way out of the ringside area, going backstage. Cameras eventually catch up with her, as does Gia Miller, where Gia asks her what that was about, and why did she do that? And Tessa says that she needed to remind people and remind Jordan who she is and why she's here. She's here to remind everyone whose name this company was built on. I don't think it's you. Tessa is back to take what is hers, and then she pie faces Gia Miller, pushing her roughly before just sort of running away. I didn't understand. Like, is the idea here that she's not supposed to be here? Is that why she's running? Or is she running because she doesn't want to deal with Jordan Grace? I'm not entirely sure. But look, if you're going to bring her back, if you're going to shove her back in our faces, doing it as a heel is the right move, because there is no way she was going to get full-on cheers from anyone. Even people that... I'm sure there are people that don't know the situation with her, and they might be into her, but TNA tends to have pretty smart fans, so some group of people were going to boo her. This was the right move if you're going to do it. I'm not looking forward to covering Tessa. I'm not looking forward to covering her versus Jordan. I am a professional here at the Mark It Down podcast, so I will be doing what I got to do. But no, I'm going to be doing it with a heavy heart and a rumbly tummy, because, man, I am struggling right now. Moving on. Oh, and again, don't fuck with Gia Miller. Guys, how many times do I got to say this? My girl doesn't deserve the nonsense. So if I wasn't going to boo Tessa before, I'm absolutely going to boo her now. And if you just heard my stomach rumble, I am genuinely sorry. Moving on, we are now going to that spoken about before, Fatal 4-Way #1 contenders match for the TNA World Championship. We have Eric Young on commentary coming out first before Mike Santana took on Joe Hendry, Steve Macklin, and Josh Alexander. This was a great match. This was a fun match. And I know I was saying before, when talking about AJ Francis being in the world title picture, that it might not necessarily be the best sign of where TNA's main event scene is. But quite frankly, these are 4 very, very strong contenders. Joe Hendry is a global phenomenon. As much as that nickname is getting a little grinding, it's true. The guy rose to superstardom, and he belongs in that title picture before he too eventually leaves for WWE. Mike Santana has been rapidly building up his credit and rapidly building his way towards that title, and it's been so earned. Steve Macklin, forever my guy. I am rooting for another world title run for him in the future. And Josh Alexander, the walking weapon. Duh. Don't need to say anything else. Josh Alexander is enough. The matchup had a lot of fun spots to it. Everybody got their stuff in. Josh didn't want any part of it from the get-go. He was more than happy to run out of the ring, more than happy to let everybody else fight, but the babyface is not allowing that to happen, all catching him. Look, there was a lot of big stuff. At one point, Hendry had a very long, very held vertical suplex. Macklin hitting a great scud missile, a tope to the outside. But the finish coming with some shenanigans as Josh zip-tied Santana to the barricade. Santana, who had hit his finish on multiple guys, and it looked like he had all the momentum on his side. He zip-tied Santana to the barricade, and then as Macklin is going for the KIA onto Hendry, Josh Alexander low blows Macklin. Alexander then goes for the C4 spike onto Macklin, but Henry goozles him and then hits that standing ovation and gets the win. Now we will see Joe Hendry challenge once again for the TNA World Championship, this time at the Genesis pay-per-view on January 19th. They can't fuck it up again, right? They can't. That'd be silly. So silly. But fun fatal four-way. We then go backstage with the world champion, Nick Nemeth, cutting a promo, acknowledging that Joe Hendry is the new number one contender for the TNA world title and will be challenging at Genesis. He puts over AJ Francis as a good challenger for himself. He even acknowledges that AJ Francis versus Joe Hendry would be a good full circle story for both men for that championship. But he is a fighting champion, and he is fighting not just for the TNA championship, but for the TNA fans. And he plans on fighting his heart out and successfully defending that world championship tonight. We then go to our Knockouts World Championship match, a street fight where Masha Slamovich, the champion, defended against Tasha Steelz by herself. Tasha Steelz, who had initially come out with Alicia Edwards for this street fight. As we were all preparing for Alicia to get involved in the matchup, Santino Marella's music hits, and Santino says that he is banning Alicia from ringside. In fact, he is banning her from the building. He goes as far as to say that if she steps 1 foot in the building, no, 1 toe in the building, no, 1 toenail in the building, her ass is out of here. His words, not mine. He then decides to fireman carry Alicia out of the ringside area, but not before calling out that if people put in the proper code, they'd be able to get a month's worth of TNA Plus for free. Santino is the gift that keeps on giving. Out the gate, Masha was dominating Tasha, just dominating the challenger, the Boricua Badass. I'm sorry, I said that very white. Boricua Badass. That was better. The tide turning when Masha attempted to drop Tasha onto the steel steps, but Tasha was able to reverse it and hit a big suplex onto the steel steps, just wiping out Masha. the finish came, again, this being a Falls Count Anywhere match. Did I put Street Fight? I did put I guess it's true. Forgive me, guys. The finish came on the entrance ramp as Masha fought off a cutter from Tasha, pushed her into the ropes. On the bounce back, Masha hits her with a huge knee strike and then hitting her with a pile driver to get the win. Masha Slamovich's Knockouts World Championship reign continues. It's only a matter of time before Tessa ruins everybody's day. We then move on to what was one of the most fun matches of the night. And honestly, they were all fun tonight. This was a good show. A tag team title match, a tag team title table match as the Hardys defended the tag titles against former champions, The System, Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers. The rules of this match were simple. To win the match, you have to put both members of the opposing team through tables. And it had to be with an offensive maneuver. Or it had to be deliberate, I should say, because that comes into play later in the match. Early on, the Hardys, I don't want to say dominated, but they definitely had the upper hand as they hit moves like Poetry in Motion. They hit their tag team stuff. They even hit their new tag team finisher, the Plot Twist. The Jeff Hardy hitting a Twist of Fate into a jumping neckbreaker from Matt Hardy. Matt being the first person to go through a table as both members of the System hit a crucifix slam through a table, eliminating Matt from the matchup. Jeff fighting on his own for quite a bit before Matt eventually coming back to save his younger brother. Matt taking out Brian Myers, hitting a huge Twist of Fate from the apron to a table on the outside, leaving Jeff to take on Eddie by themselves, one-on-one. Or not quite one-on-one. We're about to have a lesson here, folks. If you've never heard this phrase, I'm happy to share it with you. If you play stupid games, expect to win stupid prizes. And one unfortunate fan in the front row definitely won a stupid prize. As Eddie Edwards and Jeff Hardy were fighting on the outside, Eddie started jawing and having a back and forth with a fan in the front row. This fan stood up, was talking shit back and forth with Eddie. And then as Eddie kind of barked in his face a little bit, the fan lightly slapped Eddie in the face. Now, I say lightly because maybe he did put his all into it. It didn't look great, but that was more than enough to get Eddie to slap the shit out of him. Now, to the fan's credit, he mustered the strength. He did not go down. But man, was he ejected as fast as fucking possible. Don't touch wrestlers, guys. Just don't. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, whether it's friendly or whether it's vicious, just don't touch them. Put your hand out for a high five, maybe ask for a hug or something. Don't put your hands on a professional wrestler. They will kick the shit out of you. And quite frankly, you'll have it coming. But just needed to point that out because just the bizarreness of it in 2024, almost 2025. Guys, we got to grow up. Just don't do this shit. Anyway, match continuing. Eventually, Brian Myers and Matt Hardy get up. Brian throwing Matt into the barricade and then low blowing Matt and then joining his System partner and continuing to fight Jeff. Eventually, the match goes into the crowd. Bold, considering what had just happened with that fan in the front row. But the match continues into the crowd. Jeff fighting both members of the System by himself, eventually getting dropped and nearing an entryway. A fan entryway with a door and like a nice little setup. The System bring out a table. Shocking that there'd be one behind that door. But they brought out a table and put Jeff on it. As Brian is getting ready to go up and jump off the stairs, Matt comes in, makes the save, and with a chair beating down both Brian and Eddie. Now, at this point, I don't know how it happened, but Jeff, who was still laying prone on the table collapsed underneath him. It broke. It cracked. It cracked. Thankfully, the ref covered it, saying, no, that doesn't count. That doesn't count. And commentary saying it wasn't a deliberate maneuver, so it doesn't count. The ref is still keeping it going. I think the table just probably was gimmicked too hard and broke under the weight of having somebody on it for so long. But damn, that's rough. That was rough. It didn't derail everything entirely because it was still a fun ending as Matt placed Eddie Edwards onto the table. Jeff climbing through the crowd, having his moment, taking his shirt off, posing, dancing, doing his Jeff Hardy stuff before hitting a massive, massive swanton from a level up onto Eddie Edwards. And the Hardys successfully retained their TNA World Tag Team Championships. The crowd at one point even chanting, "You deserve it," to the Hardys. Man, I love the Hardy love. Always will. Moving on to our main event, we have TNA World Championship contention as Nick Nemeth defends against Top Dollar AJ Francis. Good showing. I will note Frankie Kazarian was on commentary and acknowledged that, who knows, maybe he would cash in his Call Your Shot trophy. Nemeth bringing a lot of speed against the much, much bigger opponent of AJ Francis, but was eventually neutralized by outside interference from Casey Navarro. Navarro was eventually ejected when caught in the act, but Nemeth then got in trouble after a huge chokeslam from AJ Francis. I should note that the match started out hot as Nemeth hit a fast super kick, lightning fast super kick, right out the gate as soon as the bell rang and got a 2 count very early on. But yeah, going back later into the match, Nemeth hit with a huge chokeslam by Francis, but is able to roll under the ropes and onto the ramp to prevent the pinfall. Francis then continuing attacking him until he gets just a little too cocky. After another chokeslam attempt, Nick is able to counter into a huge high up famouser, but not before I missed a big spot there. Francis hitting or attempting to hit a huge moonsault off the top rope. He didn't connect, but it looked great for someone his size, and just impressive that somebody his size would even try it. But after that famouser, Nemeth then goes for a big super kick and then lands the danger zone to get the 1, 2, 3. After the main event and a brief moment of celebration, Casey Navarro returns and attacks Nemeth. This then allows Francis to get up and deliver another chokeslam, or attempt to deliver another chokeslam, but he is interrupted by the perennial thorn in his side, Joe Hendry. Hendry makes the save and then grabs the TNA World title alongside Nemeth. They're both holding the belt for a moment. Tensions are high as they kind of go into a tug of war, and both men then talk trash to end the show. They were really teasing. They were really teasing that Kazarian was going to cash in. After the beatdown from Navarro, I was shocked that they didn't have Frankie at least try to get into the ring to do anything. I thought it was insane. But I guess we're all going to be holding our breath come Genesis if Joe Hendry is finally able to win the World Championship and then have to struggle with the threat of Frankie Kazarian. But guys, this was Final Resolution. I really enjoyed this show. I think TNA ended the year on a high note with this good event. This really fun, strong event. Some hiccups, fans, act like fans. And of course, Tessa Blanchard. Stay tuned and we'll see how that goes. But guys, thank you so much for joining me here tonight at the Mark It Down podcast. And you guys know where we are. When we're in TNA land, this is the Gym Pad Zone. If you liked what you saw, if you're new here, as DWW was, hit that subscribe button. Leave us a like. Let us know we're doing something right. That way we can keep doing it, or we can change some things if you want. The more of you guys there are, the more we can do and the more fun we can have. If you don't want to just check us out here, if you can't get enough of us here, check us out on social media. We're everywhere now, like pretty much everywhere. We're on Facebook. We're on TikTok. We're on X. We're on Blue Sky. That's super new. We're on Instagram. Our guys are putting out some funny stuff. In my case, some underappreciated stuff. I put out a fun meme today on Instagram. Nobody liked it. For shame, people. But thank you so much. Whether you're new, you're old, you've been with us since the beginning, or you've been with us since last week, or you're just joining us tonight for the first time, thank you so much. We are going to cover Saturday Night Main Event tomorrow, and we'll see you next week for our usual shenanigans. I'm James Gisanti. This is the Mark It Down Podcast. Thank you guys so much. Have a good night.